Oh, yeah, that was embarrassing.
I'm glad you got that out.
Hey, everyone, I'm Madonna and this is David, and we're going to have a quick chat about reward versus addiction versus happiness, so the sort of hormones like serotonin and dopamine, what drives them, what messes with them from both the holistic counselling perspective and from the naturopathic kinesiology perspective, because these are things that drive our happiness, our well-being, and our relationship in life, both our relationship happiness as well as our relationship trauma, so it's a fairly important thing to understand when we are, like I was chatting to a bunch of women this morning, and it was funny because I asked about medications and one of the ladies said, alcohol. And I said, no, that's self-medication. Because a lot of people.
Works for a lot of people.
It does.
If they keep it moderate.
I've got to say, I do love that. And I don't know, it feels like it should be psychological, but I get a physical reaction within my first sip of red wine, which is ridiculous in that I get this calming down. It's like it's like an oozing relaxation on the muscles that are the most exhausted from the day. I always get it.
It's interesting because with alcohol and with bubbles, if you drink champagne, you get that even more because the nasal receptors go straight to your heart and straight to your brain in 7 seconds. That's why anything that's smokable is more addictive, because if you inject it, it takes about 20 seconds because it's got to go into the vein through one side of the heart, through the lungs, back to the heart and pumps to the brain.
Right.
Whereas when you smoke something, so all the amphetamines that are now smokable, like amphetamines, what do you call that when you make it smokable? Ice. And cocaine make it smokable crack. It's more addictive because it hits your brain in 7 seconds.
Guess what's straight up the nasal passages?
I know, right?
The amygdala. So the amygdala is what drives our pain and punishment, rage, anger, frustration, escape, submission, freeze, fight, flight pathways, and switches off our pleasure reward centers, which is ironic.
Oh, right, because so the bubbles, like in beer too, it's like the first, it goes up through your nasal passage and straight to your brain very quickly.
Huh.
People don't know that.
I do love me an alcohol.
And so you get that. Yeah, well, it's like that's why the prohibitionist approach doesn't work, because if you can keep things in moderation, most things are good. Even the nature of toxic is too much of something. Usually, is that what we're going to talk about?
Well,
too much things.
Well, sort of, no. It's sort of, well, I was going to talk about serotonin for a start, because it's obviously our happiness hormone. Now, there is this, in my world, this fiction associated with hyperserotonergic syndrome, where they claim that we get too much serotonin. What they don't say when that is going on is that people are always on medication. So is it our natural serotonin that's out of whack, or is it a side effect of the darn drugs? So we make our serotonin, 90% or more of our serotonin is made in the gut. If our gut isn't working, that inhibits the release of serotonin from our gut. Now, when we take SSRIs and antidepressants, that also shuts down the serotonin
depending on
release from the gut.
They're all a bit different, all of those drugs. So
SSRIs particularly, I'm talking about.
Right.
And I heard a stat this morning that 40% of Americans are on SSRIs. Isn't that terrible? That so many people feel the need to be on antidepressants.
Well, when I was at uni, I studied that they encourage us to look at both sides of drug taking as counsellors.
Yes.
And so there's a bunch of theorists who talk about that. It's quite a big thing, and it's called the what's it called? The anti-psychiatry movement or something. Anyway, it's quite a big movement. And I remember reading that they say a lot of those drugs, the first thing that happens is they reduce your serotonin. And people say,
they do.
And these are psychiatrists, because it's a field where the specialists are arguing about it.
Yes.
And they're arguing about it academically.
Yes.
In papers. So it's not something secret, but it is that thing where they say, well, they actually say that it's possible that some of those drugs reduce your serotonin. Serotonin?
Yes, serotonin, yeah.
Serotonin permanently.
Yeah.
And then it's hard to get it back up.
Yeah, because you have to actually fix the microbiome. So this is where naturopaths come in. If you don't actually heal the gut, you can't make serotonin again. We do make most of our melatonin in the gut as well.
Right.
So, you know, there's connections in the brain with the hypothalamus, the pituitary, the pineal gland, and some of the drugs also have fluoride in them, and fluoride coats the pineal gland.
I wonder if so a lot of the people come to see counselors with addiction.
Yes.
I wonder if those drugs, because I remember, because I studied both addiction and drugs, and in the addiction one, you go through all the main things that are affected, like the neuroreceptors, and I didn't remember reading anything about the types of street drugs people use. Well, like alcohol and like cannabis, and then all the amphetamines, cocaine, and speed, and that sort of thing. I don't remember reading anything about serotonin reduction in them.
Right.
And I wonder if those things have that issue, or if it's the category. Because I watched
drugs, being addicted to drugs.
No, I watched a video.
Is that what you meant?
I watched it. Well, I'll just go. I watched a video yesterday about the history of where these modern drugs come from. And so they come from about like 1950. They found this one drug that reduced schizophrenic symptoms. And then they made another one that made them worse. And then they started using one that made it worse for depression or something. And they started off these two particular types of compounds that they made. And all the modern SRIs have come out of that. And then after that, they invented the first tricyclic ones,
right,
which are much stronger. And I actually personally tried them twice, and I both ended up in a
sort of a psychosis.
And they were both tricyclic, but that was like a long time ago. And but they do have these effects because I've experienced them personally. And lucky I was in a supportive environment when that happened. And I was able to withdraw fairly easily because I was only on them for like 20 days once, and another one was like maybe 3 months because it was for smoking.
Yeah.
And
because one of the tricks with the rural addiction when it comes to drugs is that the medical profession mean if you are addicted to a drug, two things need to happen. You need to be having bigger and bigger doses more and more frequently. So if you're not doing that, your doctor will say something is not addictive. So that's the frustration, is that people don't know that doctors have their own, you know, little mathematical equation. He goes, no, I've had you on 20 milligrams 3 times a day for the last 20 years. You can't be addicted to it. You know, because I haven't upped the dose. No, but that's their definition. You know, whereas people try to get off it, they can't get off it because they've changed their neuroreceptors.
Yeah, well, you need to taper. But you need to taper with
everything.
Street drugs too.
Yeah.
I always look at the you've got the people take, what do you call it at first? Self-medication.
Yeah.
So self-medication, we're all dealing with the same kind of substances, the ones that are used medically. Although the SRI, because those things are blocking neuroreceptors, some of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of like we've got neuroreceptors made especially for things like cannabis, for opioids. They're there and they lock in. LSD, it's the molecule's this shape and the receptor's that shape, so they lock in.
Yeah.
And so it's like our brains are made for all these substances to work with.
I interviewed a doctor.
Which makes me look at it as generally positive, which is how I like to be about things.
Yeah.
Treatments.
Yeah. Yeah, I interviewed a lady called Dr. Rima Labo about 1.5 years ago, and she is a medical doctor of over 50 years, 60 years, something like that. She's an old woman, and maybe 50 years, and she has never prescribed a pharmaceutical.
Okay.
Because in her first day in med school, the doctor up the front who sort of looked at her and ignored her and said, "Gentlemen, drugs work in one way and one way only. They destroy enzyme pathways in the body. Right. If we want the effect of destroying that enzyme pathway, we call that a drug benefit. If we don't like the destruction of that enzyme pathway, we call it a side effect."
Right.
And she put up her little hand and said, "But aren't enzyme reactions happening in every cell of the body trillions of times an hour?" And he said, "Yeah," but she said, "What happens if we're giving them drugs every day for the rest of their lives?" And he said, sit down, shut up, and don't ask that sort of question. So she decided on the first day of med school that she was never going to prescribe a pharmaceutical.
I don't understand what you're talking about, enzyme pathways. That's beyond my...
So every drug basically, well, every drug works by destroying something in your body.
So alcohol?
Yeah. Alcohol destroys lots of stuff. Doesn't mean I don't enjoy it.
Yeah, but people enjoy their pharmaceuticals and their...
Yeah, absolutely.
So here we go. So let's go to where we started talking about serotonin.
Serotonin and dopamine.
Dopamine.
Yeah, so addiction and happiness.
Well, dopamine works in the reward pathways.
Yes.
So I don't know what serotonin does so much.
Well, yeah, so it's more about the happiness, the calmness, so when we've got good serotonin levels, we feel calm, we feel nurtured, we feel loved, and we release serotonin when we feel safe.
Right.
Whereas dopamine, and this is where I think, and I've always thought this for 20 years, I've seen it, people who run on adrenaline, they often have dopamine addiction. It's often connected. So people who run on a drug will go for that next little, it's like the butcher bird with the, next shiny sparkly thing in their life. They're always after the next shiny sparkly thing. Mm-hmm. And it keeps their dopamine kicking along so people don't notice they're low in serotonin because the sparkly shiny things are keeping their brain ticking over all the time. Mm-hmm. But therefore they can't come down. They can't feel calm. They're the sort of people who hate meditation. They hate yoga. They hate sitting out in the sunshine. They don't want to just relax for 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I regularly hear people say, oh, no, I can't sit down. Oh, no, I can't. I can't relax and watch a movie. Oh, no, I can't do that.
Well, we're taught as kids slowly but surely wins the race.
Yeah. So I've only got a couple more minutes. So, yeah, so with dopamine addiction.
Well, with the thing is it's a reward neuroreceptor.
Yes.
So it's not only about drugs. So obviously when you take a drug, you get a reward, you get dopamine reward and you feel good because it makes you feel good too. And then the problem is with drugs is they're much higher amounts of dopamine.
Yeah. Totally.
So I remember reading, if coffee is about 60 or 50 points of dopamine, no, that was chocolate. And then they say, coffee's up here and then sex is like 150 and then marijuana is like 200 and then the amphetamine's like 1,000.
Right.
They're really high.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you get that much dopamine, all the natural sources, because there's all natural sources, like you say, relaxing, being in the sun, having beautiful relationships. They all produce.
Nature.
But to have those artificially stimulated ones are very hard. It makes it hard to appreciate the natural ones.
Yeah.
And so does the internet. People have internet addictions.
Yes.
It's so stimulating. You've got this bright thing like a fire that's got all pictures on. You can look up anything in the universe, talk to anyone you want. But also that will produce a high reward system in the dopamine.
Right.
Because a lot of people, and especially the kids now, everyone's addicted to their phone.
Yeah.
And you'll sit in a room with people and they'll ignore you on their phone.
Absolutely.
Scrolling. And so, so dopamine rewards all those types of things.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. So, and again, this is where the holistic counselling come in. If you get underneath all of that, where does that addictive personality come from? Well, because it will often come from not getting something we needed as a child.
Ultimately, we're self-medicating. And behind everything is something. Like, because when you're counseling, you go back through and you find all these patterns and then you'll find generational stuff coming through. And if you can resolve that, you might have a better chance of getting to a stage where you can enjoy natural dopamine sources, which are, they're more moral for a start.
Yeah.
Because people who take out of control drugs cop a lot of criticism usually, and then they're addicted.
Yeah.
Like you said, the tolerance builds up.
Yeah.
So you need more and more and more, which costs more and more and more.
Yeah.
So many things.
Yeah. Awesome. Excellent. Thanks, David. That was a great chat.
Oh, cool. Love your work.
Excellent.